And we're back. Max, tell me about the most recent events in the world of combat.
Yeah, so acknowledgements, there were a couple boxing fights. I'm not going to talk about them because I didn't get around to watching them. So moving on to the big one, the last UFC event of the year, UFC Fight Night Vegas 17, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson versus Neal. It was a good card, not a great card. They stacked the main card and that paid dividends, but the prelims were loaded with a bunch of guys who did not have wins in the UFC, and there's two ways that can go. You can get guys who have nothing to lose and everything to gain, trying to put on a show, trying to grab the fans and organization's attention, and you get people trying some crazy shit, not being too defensive, and you can get some really exciting finishes like that. And you can also get two guys who just don't have a lot of experience and a very low level, not a lot of adjustments, counter adjustments, reads. You don't see a ton of fight IQ. And in making the decision I've talked about in my Combat Corner before, the UFC to really use the Contender Series to load the bottom of the division and slowly build up contenders through putting all those guys against each other, you're going to get both. In a large part, we've gotten a lot of the quick, exciting finishes from not a lot of defense in the cage in a lot of the previous cards. We had a bit more of the sloppy, low-level stuff this time around. But we did have one exciting finish from the bottom of the card, Cody Flick, flying triangle. I'm not going to talk you through it, but that was one Contender Series winner versus another Contender Series winner. Tried something risky. It probably works out better against a guy with 0 UFC experience versus a guy with, say, 2-3 wins, 1-2 losses. But it also happened because it's a flyweight fight and you're way more agile, but just beautiful jump up, got the legs up, adjusted to the triangle on the way down. Pretty sure he had it locked in, tightened it up, a couple minor adjustments, got the tap within 20 seconds. Nice appetite satiation. I'm going to use the rest of my breakdown just to talk about the fights I previewed from bottom to top. So I thought this first one was in the main card, but it got adjusted to the prelims after I did the breakdown. Gillian Robertson versus Talia Santos. Gillian Robertson being a Canadian with the most finishes in the UFC women's flyweight division had me very excited, very hopeful, but Talia Santos being a 16-1 solid mixed martial artist had me worried, and the fight result wasn't too surprising. Santos is a Muay Thai fighter who's a big girl for the division and presents a credible striking threat. So Robertson went right to the takedowns, but if you can't strike with someone, then you can't set up your takedowns. You can't make them feint, or you can't feint and make them go back, worry about your hands, then they see the takedown coming and it's too easy to stuff it and get right on top. That's exactly what happened in the first round. Robertson was more comfortable on her back looking for arm bars than she was on her feet, trying to get set up advantageous grappling position, and that was essentially the story of the fight. Santos must have had something like 13 minutes of control time all 3 rounds. Robertson went right for the takedown, stuffed right away. Santos able to, with her Muay Thai background, find good clinch position and then find her way to the top. And this is the thing about mixed martial arts. You don't need great grappling to counteract great grappling. You just need good grappling. In a pure jiu-jitsu match, Gillian Robertson is probably the better grappler, but it's not a pure jiu-jitsu match. It is 3 5-minute rounds, and all Santos has to do to win the fight is stay on top, land a bit of ground and pound, and not get submitted, and that's exactly what she did. The moment I knew the fight was going to end or play out the way it did came in the second round. Santos was on top, doing what I just described, avoiding arm bars. Most of it happened in Gillian Robertson's full guard. And Santos decided to get a little wild. I believe it was a triangle she tried to set up. She moved to mount, tried to set it up. Robertson, being a great grappler, scrambled, used the triangle to sweep, get into top position, then escaped it, and then immediately went looking for her own submission. I think she got full mount. Santos turned to the back. Robertson transitioned, looked for a choke for a second. It wasn't there. Switched immediately to an armbar, which Santos was able to escape and sweep back into Gillian's guard. And then Santos just didn't look for a submission again and was happy to play the point game. Landed mostly superficial damage. There was one cut that Robertson had to get stitched up above the nose. So, yeah. And the one other thing I wanted to highlight was Santos was very smart in making sure all this grappling took place right against the cage. So a lot of the time, Robertson would be scrambling, trying to adjust her hips to not be lined up with Santos's so she could set up the armbar. And it was every time you saw her try and do this, you could tell the cage was hindering her. She wasn't able to fully just shoot her hips out to the side to really escape. A couple times Robertson did look to get up and Santos just stuffed it. She didn't. So it was just good fight IQ by Santos. She trusted in her top pressure. It was enough to get the win. It wasn't a particularly impressive or dominant win, but a win's a win nonetheless. She's probably going to be a top 5 in the women's flyweight division right now. She's well-rounded. She's got good fight IQ. I'm disappointed to not see Robertson pull out the win, but I think this fight shows where her limits are right now. She needs to be more confident in her striking so that she can set up advantageous grappling position and not accept being on the bottom so easily. She needs to work on not being stuck against the cage on her back. And I love that she goes for submission over position, but she could have won the second round quite dominantly if she had just been a little more patient, hunted a little more. So I don't want to see that wholesale change. I don't want to see her become like someone who just sits in top mount and rides out the rounds like that. But it would have made the fight more competitive. So small adjustments, and I think Gillian's right back in there. There wasn't anything shocking in about the holes revealed in her game in this performance, but when she's outsized, outmatched on the feet, and the girl knows what she's doing on the ground well enough to not get submitted, it's a problem she's going to have to address to move forward and find her way at the top of the division. All right, next fight, Alex Morono versus Anthony Pettis. I said at the beginning that a lot of this card was low level. I was so grateful for this matchup because this was a high level mixed martial arts bout between two guys who have been in the UFC for a long time, and it showed. It was perfect placement on the card as the prelim headliner. Fight started. Pettis went for something crazy. I can't remember. It was a jumping switch kick, I think, went off balance, landed on his back. Morono charged right forward, got good grappling position, and started hunting. And right away, you saw two high-level grapplers just with Morono in an advantageous position, searching chokes, searching mount, searching ground and pound, and just the constant counter adjustments and reads in the grappling was so nice to watch. Just okay, you're going to go for wrist control. I'm going to adjust the hips. You're adjusting the hips, so I'm going to move my leg. Oh, you're doing this, so something might have opened up for Pettis to scramble, and that was most of the first round. Morono took it just from 3 minutes of good grappling control, but Pettis found his way to his feet, started finding his way in the striking. Same story in the second round. No silliness from Pettis to get in a bad position. Looked great on the feet. Finding more and more. He did a lot of his best work from southpaw, but he'd mix in the orthodox just to give different looks, confuse, and then back to southpaw. He landed a lot of nice straights with plenty of good kicks to keep Alex thinking. Third round, more of the same. And then Pettis really sealed the deal in the last minute with a beautiful spinning kick, caught Alex, wobbled him, had him hurt. Pettis tried to follow up, looked for some punches, looked for a guillotine, couldn't find the finish, but you love it's so hard to score a close but competitive, but like dominant, not dominant, but mildly dominant round. It's so nice to see a fighter put like a cap in that round, and that's what Pettis did with that kick. The fact they did it in class a spinning kick just shows Showtime hasn't gone away. That's what I asked for this fight. Show some dominance. You know you're getting a good opponent in Alex Morono, but not a great opponent. If you want to be a top 10 guy still, then you have to come out here and look great against this good fighter. And he more or less did that. What's taken away is that first round, but there's something for like coming back from adversity like he did. The spinning kick shows he's still dangerous, still got that Showtime flair to his game, still got power, still got timing. And he said he wants to move back down to lightweight. This fight was at 170. I think that's the right move, especially because lightweight is kind of wide open. You use your name to get one top 10 matchup. You do something impressive like you did against Wonderboy, and you're right back in the conversation. Nice job by Anthony Pettis. Very, very much appreciated the fight between two high-level experienced guys. So now we can move on to the main card. Christmas came early. Greg Hardy got finished by Marcin Tybura. So the first round, Tybura got the worst of the exchanges because he kept it on the feet. I didn't think he looked that badly outmatched. Like, they show tweets during the UFC or the card now, and some people were saying complete outclassing of striking on the feet by Hardy. I didn't see that. I saw him get the better of the exchanges with some good jabs, some good kicks, and being very dangerous when Tybura had his back against the fence. There was one exchange in particular where Tybura looked like he took several hard shots, but he weathered them. He was constantly moving his head, using his shell. And this was great game planning by Tybura, because you saw, I believe he forced 2 grappling exchanges in the first round, and you saw Hardy was just too big. The guy cuts down to 266 pounds and walks in the cage probably 20 pounds heavier than that. Tybura, as a moderately big heavyweight, weighed in, I think, at 255 or so. It's really hard to take a huge guy with 30 pounds on you down right off the bat when they have all their strength. So Tybura not chasing the grappling too hard in the first round, being content to strike with him, set him up perfectly in the second round, where his striking started to look a lot better. I think he started to get some reads on Hardy's crosses and hooks because he was showing better head movement, dodging more, and landing more. That set him up with like a minute and a half left to get a double leg takedown, took Hardy down, stayed patient. Hardy really didn't show much off his back. He kind of landed in a position where he kept his shoulders and hips up, kept his right arm hooked over Tybura, looking to just find an instance of space, scramble and explode. Tybura did the right thing. He stayed patient. He waited. He just nudged forward, found his moment to flatten Hardy out, and then just postured up and started throwing ground and pound. And that's where Hardy really looked lost. So I want to talk about this finish pretty precisely and carefully because it was interesting. Several of Tybura's strikes landed to the back of Hardy's head. And it's really hard for me to know how I feel about this because there is no fighter I would rather see get beaten up like that or hit like that than Greg Hardy. But if it was any other fighter, if it was a fighter I loved, I might be screaming bloody murder that the fighter I love got taken out illegally. So I had to watch the finish a couple times to try and figure out what I thought. And what I realized was that I think there were 3 egregious looking strikes that were well behind the ear. Here's the thing about MMA finishes. You almost have to give one. You can excuse one strike. It's when it's repeated that you go, hey, that was bullshit. It's the first strike landed on Hardy's ear. Hardy shelled, covered the ear, and exposed the back of his head. When you have a half second and you're already throwing the strike, the natural thing to do is readjust and go for the back. That happened. Ref said, hey, not the back of the head. Tybura adjusts, goes back to the front. As soon as Hardy shelled and just, he turned, covered the back and the side and front of his head and left the back of his head exposed. I think the couple strikes Tybura landed were just a result of the way Hardy was defending himself. That was the other weird part of the finish. Hardy didn't look hurt, he just looked lost. It was a true technical knockout because the ref had to stop it when Tybura just kept landing unanswered strikes from a dominant position. But when the camera cut back to Hardy, he was gassed on the mat, not knocked out or concussed on the mat. So you almost wish Tybura, not you almost, I wish Tybura had put more of a beating on him. I think there could have been a couple more and the damage was just about to come. So I guess good stoppage by the ref to prevent it. I'll say it again. I don't think the back of the head strikes should be the story of that finish because they were a result of Greg Hardy's defense, not dirty fighting from Marcin Tybura. So we love to see it. Congrats to Tybura. This puts him 4 wins in a row. He's ready to take a second run at the top 15 of the heavyweight division. I'd love to see him fight Walt Harris next, but we'll see. So that was a nice way to start the main card. Next fight was Marlon Moraes versus Rob Font. Moraes came in with a great game plan, just opportunistic grappling, took Font down. And Marlon Moraes is a very high-level grappler. So all the credit in the world to Rob Font for getting out of 2 dominant grappling positions by Moraes. Showed great ability to fight the guard with the legs while working wrist control. Second get up, I think, was just side control, great scrambling. You see that more at bantamweight, flyweight. But Marlon Moraes has a guillotine win over Rafael Sunsao, another high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. So super impressed by Font's ability to stay out of danger in the first round there. And then once he got back to his feet, he just, something clicked for him on the striking. He came forward heavy-handed and found a finish in 30 seconds. I couldn't tell which strikes started to hurt Moraes because Font landed a couple that had Moraes backing up, worried. Moraes threw a spin kick. Font blocked it beautifully, stepped forward with a jab that just wobbled, dropped Moraes for a second. Rob Font knew something was up, kept on the pressure, landed a beautiful uppercut through Moraes' shell, dropped him good that time, and just got on top and kept pummeling, kept finding the finish. It was a beautiful performance by Rob Font. Everything you want to see from a top contender, the ability to defend against a very high-level grappler while keeping in mind very dangerous striking, power in his hands, moving forward, super accurate, well-timed strikes. I said he's been here twice before with a chance against that top contender to put his name in the top contender and fell short. What was going to happen the third time? Amazing performance. So I don't know what's next for Rob Font. The bantamweight division is kind of balancing itself out in a state of realignment. You don't really, all the guys haven't quite fought each other. Jimmy Rivera might be a good matchup, but congrats to Rob Font, and we'll see what's next for Marlon Moraes. I'm sure he's not going anywhere, but he's had a tough last 4 fights, I'd say. So I think it looked like he went back to the drawing board, tried to reinvent himself. The grappling was a great counter adjustment, but Rob Font counter adjusted even better. So again, I think Marlon Moraes might have to do a bit of gatekeeping now, but he's certainly not through. We'll see what's next for him. I don't have a lot to say about this next fight, Michel Pereira versus Khaos Williams. I said anything could happen, really. I did not have a technical kickboxing match in mind when I said that. Both guys fought like they knew they had the potential to gas out very easily while also being aware that the other guy had the potential to knock them out. So it was a pretty tough fight to score. Williams stayed very patient, kept his right hand glued to his chin, looked for the straight, but Pereira didn't really engage with him and walk forward to throw punches the way the last two guys Khaos Williams has knocked out have. And so Williams couldn't find the button the same way he did in his last two fights. So you almost want to give credit to Pereira just for not getting knocked out in the first minute of the fight. Like, lots of circling, lots of feinting, lots of unorthodox movement. That was enough, I guess, for the judges to give him the win. The striking was pretty close. I think octagon control time played a part in that decision. Not a lot to say about it. Both fighters are still early in their UFC careers, work in progress, but it's interesting to see, okay, kickboxing space style works well for not getting knocked out against Khaos Williams, and Michel Pereira has enough fight IQ to not gas himself out the way he did in his first couple fights. So not a lot to say about that. Maybe you give Pereira like a contender of a contender for a top 15 spot, like a Muslim Salikov, Bilal Muhammad, I don't know. Khaos Williams, I'm sure, will be back with more knockouts, but it'll be interesting to see what his opponent does in his next fight, having seen Michel Pereira pull this off. Moving on, co-main event, José Aldo versus Marlon Vera. This one played out more or less as I expected. Aldo was just the better fighter. The first round was kind of enough to tell the story of the fight to me. Aldo's body shots were brutal. His leg kicks were brutal. Marlon Vera was game. He walked forward, but he couldn't do it with quite as much recklessness or brutalness as he's done in his other fights, because he knew Aldo was just such a threat, so much power, such great accuracy, timing, speed. The first round, like I said, I thought Aldo won pretty clearly. He had a couple of absolutely nasty body shots. The second round, Vera made some good adjustments. The striking numbers were close, but it's like I was saying last podcasts, not all significant strikes are equally significant. They count every leg kick. Marlon Vera threw a lot of leg kicks, landed a lot of leg kicks, but José Aldo landed the harder, more damaging leg kicks. You could hear them. You could the side kicks that you tap the other guy's knee with. You're either gonna break their ACL, MCL, or you're gonna do nothing except manage distance and make them wary. So some judges I think all three judges actually gave Vera the second round. I don't know how warranted that was. And then veteran move by Aldo. 1 minute into the third round, he found an opportunity to take Vera's back, took it, and you just saw the high-level jiu-jitsu game of Aldo, which you don't get to see very often, but he just stayed on Vera's back, threatened with the choke enough that Vera had to mind it and couldn't find a way to peel Aldo off. Not a particularly exciting third round, but a very dominant one. You kind of wish Aldo had looked for a finish a bit more, because it seemed like he was more concerned with keeping position and winning the round than with actually getting the finish. But when you're in a back mount on the back like that for so long, you've got to give the round, and it's a finishing position, so you can't expect the ref to come in and stop it. Vera defended well enough, but couldn't figure out how to do that and get Aldo off his back. So great performance by Aldo. Both fighters kind of showed more or less where you have them. Like, Aldo is still absolutely a top 5 bantamweight fighter. Marlon Vera, top fighter, but not at that elite level yet with his striking defense or grappling defense or his ability to find finishing shots. So Aldo just lost to the champ. I don't really see a rematch anywhere in his near future. He's really going to have to work his way back to another title shot, but I love his call out to start doing that. TJ Dillashaw, who's going to be coming off a 2-year suspension for EPO, which he was stripped of his bantamweight championship title for. I think a win over Aldo probably gets Dillashaw a title shot. I don't know if that should be the case. It depends who else is there. He absolutely does not deserve a title shot before Aljamain Sterling. As long as that happens, I won't be too upset. Depending on how a Dillashaw Aldo match would look, that I would love to see. The footwork games, Aldo's leg kicks, Dillashaw's unorthodox movement. If Dillashaw's wrestling can get to Aldo, that would be a hell of a fight to make. I hope they make it. Last up, let's talk about the main event. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, Geoff Hands of Steel Neal. Looking at Wonderboy's last few fights and Neal's last few fights, I thought Neal might struggle a little with the unorthodoxy of Wonderboy, but he'd be able to make the right reads to find himself in a position to land 1 or 2 shots that would finish Wonderboy. I was wrong. I think something about Neal's technical background actually made it harder to fight Wonderboy, because when you're looking at him and trying to puzzle him out, then you're playing his game, and he is a better tactician at that game than probably anyone else in the UFC. The main reason I was wrong, though, was because Wonderboy's best defense was his offense. He landed hard and he landed early on Neal. His jab and his straight from orthodox and southpaw were his best friends all night, especially in the first round and third round, I think, and it just discouraged Neal. In the Luque fight, Wonderboy had to take a bit of pressure, take a bit of a beating before he started to find his range and timing. In this fight, he was not in that situation. He landed quick, he landed hard, he landed early, and it discouraged Neal. It made Neal have to figure out how to walk forward and get to Wonderboy. He was able to do that, but not with enough power, not with enough threat, not with enough consistency to win any rounds. 50-45 Wonderboy, an absolute striking masterclass, even more impressive because it was in a 20-foot, 5-foot, as opposed to 30-foot octagon. The footwork, every time he got near the fence, the fainting to circle out, mixed in with the strikes to back Neal up, mixed in with the few times he did get his back against the cage, dodging the strikes, getting off the clinch within 30 seconds every time, taking it right back to the center, the side kicks. It was vintage Wonderboy minus, I don't think he threw any spinning kicks, or not any that landed at least. Maybe we rated Neal a bit too high, a bit too early. He went straight from clearing out guys outside the top 15 to a real top 5 guy in Wonderboy. Wonderboy's a little down the ranks right now due to his Pettis loss, but I think, I don't want to say fluke, but you can say 8-9 times out of 10 Wonderboy beats Pettis, and he's looked great in his last 2 fights, so I think he shoots back pretty high into the rankings. So Neal's in this position where, okay, he's better than Bilal Muhammad, a guy who should be ranked top 15 but isn't, just because of how deep welterweight is, but he's not on Wonderboy's level. So with Neal, I'd like to see him, well, he's going to take time, he's going to get better, he's going to improve. I think you give him some fights against like top 15 to top 10 guys. Vicente Luque would be my first choice. That would be an absolute banger of a fight. You've got like Ponzinibbio and Li Jinglang or Neil Magny, those type of fighters. As for Wonderboy, he called out Jorge Masvidal, which would be a hell of a fight because Wonderboy had a win over Masvidal at UFC 217 right before what Masvidal refers to as the resurgence, and he became the icon that he is now. So running that back to see how much has Masvidal improved, how much is Wonderboy still the better fighter, or has Masvidal made a true resurgence? That would be great for Masvidal's brand, and that would be a great way to decide who gets the next title shot after Gilbert Burns. The drawback of that is you take Colby Covington out of the picture to do so. Masvidal Covington excites me more than Masvidal Wonderboy, if I'm being honest. First, because of the bad blood, and second, because Covington's style is so similar to Usman in many ways that the best way to say, okay, how's this guy going to do against Usman, is to ask, well, how does he do against Covington? And if Masvidal can come in there and just take out Covington with ease, the Usman fight gets real exciting. If he does the same to Wonderboy, less so. If Wonderboy can do the same to Masvidal, though, look as good as he did in the Neal fight, then I'm also super excited to see him fight Usman. Only if I pray to God, like someone in Wonderboy's camp makes sure the cage is 30 feet, because I'll end talking about this main event with talking about a Wonderboy Usman matchup. I didn't see enough from Wonderboy to make me confident he presents real problems to Usman, because Neal was able to back Wonderboy up against the fence, keep him there. And for a striker, when you have someone against the fence, you have to load your hands up, swing your head, and find a shot. Wonderboy's such a great counter striker that he's not in a ton of danger from that. But Usman, all he has to do is dip his head and lock his hands. That's a much quicker and a much harder to counter movement. And once Usman's in that position, he's just so dang strong and has such stupid cardio that he just holds you there. He doesn't actually have to take you down to win the round. He just holds you there, does enough that the ref won't separate you, or at least will wait like 2 minutes before separating you, and just walk you forward to that position again. So it didn't make me go, oh yeah, Wonderboy for sure, like, can beat Usman, because if Neal can get him backed up against the fence, then Usman can get him backed up against the fence. But it is a super interesting matchup. I think Wonderboy is one win away from that matchup. You could make it against Masvidal. You could make it against the winner of Edwards Chimaev when that fight happens. I'm not sure. The welterweight division will never not be interesting. We'll never not have amazing matchups. This was an excellent main event. It's risen Wonderboy's stock, brought him back to where he belongs. Revisionist history now, you look at like the Till fight, which he lost by a very close split decision. You look at the Woodley fights, which weren't exactly decisive wins for Woodley, even if like the scoring makes sense, and you say, wow, how good is Wonderboy? Would love to see him get one more shot at the belt at 38 years old. Overall, pretty good card to wrap up 2020 for UFC. I enjoyed it, even if I have my qualms about the prelims and the matchmaking the UFC has decided to undergo. Nice way to close off 2020. Looking forward to what the UFC has for us in 2021. I'll end up 2020 over my next couple combat corners doing some wrap-ups and previews, but we're going to end it there for now.